Action Sports. Hot Air Ballooning by Kelly Hicks. Rourke Educational Media. Copyright 2013. Thinking about flying. Have you ever wondered about flying? Birds and bats flap their wings and glide through the skies effortlessly. Airplanes soar with tremendous speed and purpose. But a hot air balloon may be the most graceful way to fly through the air. Many people celebrate special events, like anniversaries and birthdays, by taking a ride in a hot air balloon. The history of hot air balloons. A young Frenchman named Joseph Montgolfier watched as the smoke and ash rose from a fire in his fireplace. Some historians say he thought about the floating clouds in the sky. Others would say his mind was focused on wanting to help the French military find a way to attack the enemy from the sky instead of on land. Did you know? Crowds in France were fascinated by the introduction of the hot air balloon and often gathered to witness launches. Joseph Montgolfier. Joseph began to experiment with smoke and a paper bag. He and his brother Etienne thought that gas from the fire would fill the bag and cause it to rise. They called it Montgolfier gas. The paper bags, though, kept catching on fire. By 1782, the brothers were using taffeta and other materials instead of the paper bag to hold the gas. Later, others discovered that it wasn't the gas or smoke, but it was the heat that caused the material to rise. Did you know? Although the Montgolfier brothers received credit for designing the first hot air balloons, the first recorded hot air balloon flight took place in Portugal on August 8, 1709. Father Bartholomew de Guzmão set fire to twigs and sticks and watched as his balloon rose to the ceiling of the royal palace, where it remained in the air for several seconds. After many trials and experiments, on June 4, 1783, the Montgolfier brothers launched their first balloon to the delight of a large crowd in France. The balloon had a diameter of about 33 feet, 10 meters, and traveled a distance of about 1 mile, 1.6 kilometers. Since that early launch, people still gather to enjoy the colorful display at balloon festivals. Albuquerque, New Mexico hosts an international balloon festival every October, and Louisville, Kentucky celebrates the sport with food, music, and hot air balloon races. Did you know? The first living beings to travel as passengers in a hot air balloon were a sheep, a duck, and a rooster who traveled almost 2 miles, 3.2 kilometers in an 8-minute flight on September 19, 1783. All 3 animals landed safely. The parts of the balloon. Inventors experimented with different materials to make the balloons. Eventually, they discovered that nylon was the best material to use. Called the envelope, this fabric is the part of the balloon that fills with hot air. There is a layer of fire-resistant material at the bottom of the envelope. This material is similar to the fabrics worn by race car drivers and firefighters. The envelope of a hot air balloon displays a variety of bright colors and interesting patterns. Inventors used different materials to lift early balloons into the air. They used wood, feathers, coal, paper, animal fats, and even whale oil to help the balloons get off the ground. Today, a burner beneath the balloon produces a flame that reaches up into the bag and heats the air. The air inside the bag remains warmer than the surrounding air and is therefore lighter than the outer air, which causes the bag to rise. Burner. The pilot feeds fuel to the burner, which lifts the hot air balloon off the ground. To make the balloon rise higher, the pilot burns more fuel. To lose altitude, the pilot burns less fuel or opens the cooling vent to let out some of the warmer air. Once landed on the ground, the pilot pulls the rip panel to deflate the bag. In order to fly a hot air balloon, a pilot must obtain a license from the Federal Aviation Administration and be at least 14 years old. A pilot has to be at least 16 years old to carry passengers. Wicker basket. The passengers ride in a basket that attaches to the balloon. Usually made of wicker, the basket needs to be strong enough to carry weight, but flexible enough to withstand repeated landings. The basket may be small to carry only a pilot, or large enough to carry 15 people. The pilot uses thin cables, usually made of steel, to attach the basket to the envelope. Did you know? The payload consists of the basket, the equipment, the passengers, and the supplies. The heavier the payload, the larger the balloon must be to be able to lift off the ground. Balloon pilots have ground crews that follow each voyage to help with the landing. Uses for balloons. Hot air balloons grew in importance during times of war. In the Civil War, World War I, and World War II, armies used balloons to observe the enemy and determine locations of oncoming troops. They also used barrage balloons to prevent low-flying enemy attacks. These captive balloons, held still with cables, would rip apart enemy planes that flew too low. Hot air balloons are useful for research and science. Meteorologists use gas balloons equipped with an instrument called a radiosonde to measure temperature, humidity, pressure, and altitude. Hot air balloon enthusiasts participate in races and rallies around the world almost every weekend. Some competitors participate in games. One game involves dropping bags of flour to try to hit a target. Some serious balloonists try to set records for traveling the fastest or longest distance. The United States National Championships are held annually. There is also a worldwide competition that takes place each fall, with different countries serving as host. Traveling in a hot air balloon is a great way to see the sights when visiting a new place or explore while on vacation. Balloon flight through the years. Timeline. June 4th, 1783. The Montgolfier brothers launched their first balloon. September 19th, 1783. A duck, a sheep, and a rooster are the first passengers to ride in a hot air balloon. January 7th, 1785. Jean-Pierre Blanchard and Dr. John Jeffries are the first to fly across the English Channel. 1978. Ben Abruzzo, Maxie Anderson, and Larry Newman are the first to cross the Atlantic Ocean. 1999. Bertrand Piccard and Brian Jones are the first to fly around the world without landing. A flight of 25,361 miles, 40,815 kilometers in 19 days, 10 hours, and 24 minutes. 2002. American Steve Fossett is the first to complete a solo trip around the world with an unofficial time of 13 days, 11 hours, and 33 minutes. Glossary. Altitude. Altitude. The height of something above the ground. Barrage balloons. Barrage balloons. Balloons held captive by wires used to prevent enemy attacks. Burner. Burner. A device used to produce heat or flame. Envelope. Envelope. The material of a hot air balloon, usually made of nylon. Montgolfier gas. Montgolfier gas. The name given to the gas that lifted the Montgolfier balloons, which was later found only to be heated air. Nylon. Nylon. A strong synthetic fiber. Payload. Payload. The load carried by a vehicle, including, in a balloon, those items necessary for its flight. Radiosonde. Radiosonde. A miniature radio transmitter carried aloft, used to measure atmospheric conditions. Rip panel. Rip panel. A part of the balloon that allows air to be released from the envelope quickly. Wicker. Wicker. Thin, flexible twigs or branches, usually from a willow tree, used to make baskets and furniture.